Carey Gillam, Research Director for U.S. Right to Know. USRTK.org is the website, as in right to KNOW, no. USRTK.org, and you can tweet at Carey, C-A-R-E-Y, Gillam, G-I-L-L-A-M. Carey, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. Glyphosate, if I'm saying it right.
Glyphosate.
Right. Glyphosate?
Yeah.
Glyphosate. Glyphosate is the chemical name for what Monsanto sells as Roundup. And from what I'm reading, you guys are finding it in our honey supply?
Yeah. So I've been living and breathing and really interested in this for almost 20 years now. I'm a little bit of a glyphosate junkie. I'm not sure many people out there would know about it other than Roundup. You know, Roundup is the world's largest, most widely used herbicide, and the active ingredient is called glyphosate. A year ago, the World Health Organization said glyphosate was a probable human carcinogen. This is used on a wide array of food crops, you know, corn and soybeans and wheat and a whole lot of other crops. And a lot of people have been very worried that there is glyphosate in our food. But the USDA and the FDA have not tested for this pesticide in our food, even though they test for a whole lot of other pesticides that don't get used nearly as much.
Well, this is actually an herbicide, not a pesticide, right?
Well, it's a pesticide. It's an herbicide, which is indeed a pesticide. Yes,
I see. Because the herbs are considered pests, so pesticide is a larger category that includes herbicides and insecticides.
Exactly.
I see. I didn't. Thank you for that. I didn't realize that distinction until just now. Continue.
Sure. So you know, people have been worried about it in food, and the USDA and the FDA are supposed to test food every year for different pesticide residues, and they do that. But they don't test for glyphosate, and they haven't. And they've come under quite a lot of public pressure and a lot of heat. And the Government Accountability Office last year, or 2 years ago in 2014, took the FDA to task for that. So they've started doing a little bit of testing now, just a little bit, and they don't really want to talk much about it. And they didn't want to talk much about it to me. But we were able to get some internal emails and documents and things that showed that they have found it in honey. In fact, they talk about not being able to find honey that didn't have glyphosate in it.
Yikes!
So that's, you know, and that's a big deal because glyphosate isn't used by beekeepers. It's not used anywhere near, you know, beehives, and you don't want it in your honey. You probably don't want it in any of your food, right?
Yeah.
But so you can't keep it away.
So this reminds me of the 60s with DDT, that you know, suddenly it was ubiquitous, and then we discovered that it was destroying the ability of birds' eggs for the shells to form properly, and so birds weren't reproducing. Thus, Rachel Carlson's book Silent Spring, that, you know, one day we'd have a spring and no birds would be tweeting. You know, we did something about DDT, but I'm wondering, you know, in one of my books, Unequal Protection, I had a whole chapter about the George Herbert Walker Bush administration and Monsanto and the revolving door thereof. How many of the senior executives, or how many of the people who are decision makers at USDA right now are former Monsanto executives?
Isn't that a good question? You're right, and it wouldn't just be USDA. You know, you can look at Michael Taylor at FDA,
right?
And at USDA and EPA and FDA. Michael Taylor was very interested. You can tell from some of the internal documents, and there's been a lot of conversation about how to spin this, how to present it, what kind of talking points that they need to put together. Monsanto's concerned about this. And you know, there are a lot of lawsuits out there right now being filed about glyphosate. The EPA right now is considering, they're conducting a risk assessment on glyphosate.
Right.
And so, you know, there's a lot going on about this. There are a lot of people concerned. It's a multi-billion-dollar product. It makes a lot of money for a lot of people. So, you know, this is a pretty controversial.
Yeah, and thus, actually, it's which means it's also making a lot of money for a lot of politicians or at least funding their campaigns, because of, you know, that's just like anything that makes a lot of money. You got to get the politicians on board. We're talking with Carey Gillam, a research director with U.S. Right to Know. USRTK.org is the website. You can tweet her at CareyGillam. Carey, as a self-confessed or described glyphosate geek, I just wanted to run something by you. We had a scientist on the program, it must have been 6 months or so ago. Her field was not molecular biology, or it was not, cell biology, but she was very familiar with that. And she asserted that the reason why Monsanto has suggested that glyphosate is absolutely non-toxic to humans is that it interrupts an enzyme process in plants that allows plants to replicate themselves and to grow, or actually to grow, and that enzyme pathway, that metabolic pathway, does not exist in animals, and therefore it's all good. Don't worry. Be happy. Go home. You know, drink your glyphosate. Drink your Roundup if you want. But according to her, that metabolic pathway is present in bacteria, and our gut bacteria is not only part of our digestive system. It's also part of our endocrine system. It's part of our nervous system. It's part of our immune system. It is absolutely essential to human health. We're now seeing some really interesting statistical studies on childhood gut flora being screwed up, and there being an association with that, between that and autism and a whole variety of other things. And she was pointing out that about a decade and a half ago, thereabouts, up until that point, they had never used glyphosate on wheat, because there wasn't a genetically modified form of wheat. There's no Roundup-ready wheat out there. But they started using it in the last decade or two, just in the 3 days before harvest, because it kills the wheat and it makes the stalks brittle, which increases by 5 or 10% the efficiency of the threshing machines that harvest the wheat, because they're popping off, you know, crispy kernels rather than stringy, hard to grab kernels. And therefore, there's glyphosate in our wheat, and we're seeing this explosion of people who say that they're gluten intolerant because they eat things with wheat in it, and it's making them sick. Might it be the glyphosate? What, you know, she was just putting that forward as her theory and as a question. I wanted to run it by you. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm guessing you're talking about Stephanie Seneff?
Yes.
From MIT?
Yes.
No, I've talked with her quite a bit. Yes, I understand that theory. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of different scientists that have a lot of concerns and theories along those lines, that this is an endocrine disruptor, that there are all sorts of health impacts that we're not really even understanding or only beginning to understand. And I certainly am not a scientist and can't say, yeah, I think that's right or wrong. You know, it's my job really to just try to keep abreast of all this and present it so that smarter people than I am, you know, can decide what they want to do about it or not do about it in terms of policy matters and things. But it's very concerning. And the thing at U.S. Right to Know, what we've seen and what I've seen in my career as a journalist, I was with Reuters for almost 17, 18 years, is that the people in control of the information, the people who have the most power, Monsanto allies that they have in Congress and in the regulatory systems, they really dominate the conversation, and they dominate the scientific information and the literature out there, and it's very hard for dissenting voices to move forward. Anyone that has a message that's contradictory to the profit potential, gets shut down or called a lunatic. Stephanie Seneff has been, maligned and,
sure.
On and on and on. So
so we need more research. We need to learn more about this.
We need more research. I think we need, independent research.
I agree. Carey, we got to wrap it up. Hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Sorry, that guy always steps on us. Carey Gillam, Research Director at U.S. Right to Know, USRTK. Thank you, Carey.
Thank you.
Great talking with you. We'll be back.